Welcome in, Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh, Donnie Rightside, and Joe Lisi with you for the Sunday edition of Wild Card Weekend, where apparently we signed up for 3 doubleheaders.
Yeah.
What a difference a day can make. We had 2 teams at advance yesterday, meaning 2 were eliminated, and a game moved. Buffalo and Pittsburgh, not today, but tomorrow. SportsGrid will have you covered, though, throughout the Monday doubleheader. But a lot for us to get to here today, Joe. 2 to recap and 2 to preview.
Yeah, did we leave this desk? I mean, it's amazing.
I did. I wasn't.
He's back.
Yeah.
He's back. That was a good one. That was a good one. You know, great matchups today in the NFC, Green Bay and Dallas, and then the late game between Matt Stafford and his former team, former team in terms of the Detroit Lions and Jared Goff. So the stage is set for marquee battles, but we saw yesterday, right? Cleveland getting dominated by C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. I mean, that team stepped up. And then in the late window, it was the same old Kansas City Chiefs grinding out a 26-7 victory over, I want to say, the gutless Miami Dolphins. That was a horrible effort on the road yesterday, Donnie, in Arrowhead.
Yeah, 2 gutless performances yesterday here. One by the Cleveland Browns, one certainly by the Miami Dolphins. But also, today is one of those days where we're not looking at weather conditions whatsoever. You got 2 dome games today, 4 high-flying offenses. We should get a lot more offense, at least that we saw out of the Browns and the Dolphins yesterday. But credit those teams. And also, in the initial breakdowns that I was looking at yesterday, how would the teams off that semi-bye hold up? Well, the Browns took a bye. Basically should have took 2 straight byes. They were horrendous yesterday against the Texans. And then you saw the Chiefs who had the bye and were at home and picked up that easy victory. I can't wait to get it started today.
We've got a radio audience with us here, Sirius XM, Channel 159, listening to Pro Football Today. Kevin Walsh, Donnie Rightside, and Joe Lisi. And look, yeah, we're going to get into these games quite a bit. We have plenty of time today. The initial takeaway from yesterday, amongst everything else, the Miami Dolphins need to move off of Tua Tagovailoa.
Ooh.
A lot of people will probably think that is an overreaction. This is something that the top play callers in this league have done, and they've been successful in doing so. And I believe Mike McDaniel fits that description. We'll see if they're willing to do it. But for Kansas City, and this is, again, we're going to really dive into this, the weather was the biggest story heading into that football game. I know the Chiefs' offense was not perfect nor crisp, but the Chiefs' offense was basically what we've seen all season long. Move the football, some drops here, settle for field goals. Nothing about the weather yesterday messed things up for Kansas City, other than Kelsey, I guess, going sleeveless and then not being able to catch the football in the game, which I think really is what makes it so difficult to justify what happened to Miami. Because the weather impacted. Well, it didn't impact the other team. So I don't think that actually is any type of valid excuse with what we saw from the Dolphins there in Arrowhead Stadium.
Absolutely not. And you talk about Travis Kelsey stepping up yesterday, 7 receptions, 71 yards. Rashee Rice, what a 130-yard performance. Pat Mahomes gets through his total. Due to their 39.5, he blows through that in terms of 262, and then the 41 rushing yards as well. So they were prepared. They ran for 4.3 yards per rush, 147 yards on the ball game. And we talked about it in terms of before we got started today. If you're going to go out and you're the Miami Dolphins and you're going to go on the road and Tua's only going to throw for 199 passing yards in terms of that performance, Tyreek Hill, guys, and Jalen Waddle to combine for only 80 receiving yards and 7 receptions. You went out and you laid up in terms of that ball game, so that's why I said it was gutless. You got to go down with your best playmakers, and they certainly didn't do that yesterday.
No, it's a good point you bring up. Just take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs here yesterday. Well, Patrick Mahomes, he threw the ball 41 times. You're saying to yourself, I'm going to win or lose with my top guys. Isaiah Pacheco, what did he get, Joe? 24 carries, 89 yards, and a touchdown. Look at the wide receivers. Who have we said all year long are our go-to guys? Obviously, it's Travis Kelsey at tight end, and it's Rashee Rice. 8 catches, 7 catches, $130, and also 71 respectively here. You take a look at the Miami Dolphins. Mostert, 8 for 33. Tua Tagovailoa did throw 39 times, but it just felt like they weren't doing anything aggressive. And finally, that had me sitting up in the bed last night when I said to myself, hold on, look at this. Tyreek Hill's deep, wide open, touchdown pass, which also drew a flag for pass interference. It looks like they're going to start being aggressive. They weren't aggressive the rest of the way when it looks like that was the way you wanted to win it. Lean on your stars. Kansas City did it, and it worked.
Absolutely. So, and again, we'll dive into Browns-Texans in our next segment. It's on, as well as Chiefs and Dolphins. But for today, 50.5, 52.5. That is the expectation. We're indoors in Dallas as well as Detroit. The Cowboys a 7-point favorite against the Green Bay Packers. The Lions a field goal favorite against the LA Rams. And I think the conversation heading into this game tonight for Detroit, Joe, man, you would think that the Rams are the team that went in out there and won a division. I still think that this team lost in overtime to Baltimore and has been given more credit for that than anything else. I know they won all those other games. The schedule was not as daunting. This is a tough task here today. I think some of this Rams love has gone a bit too far.
Yeah, it's a great point. And some of the love is because they won a Super Bowl not too long ago with Matt Stafford and Sean McVay. The experience in terms of this type of situation, the emergence of Kyron Williams and those young wide receivers, now Puka Nacua, heading into this ballgame. But you're absolutely right in terms of Jared Goff and this offense. Balanced, they can run it with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and they're physical, especially in the front seven. So it's going to be a very difficult ball game. You got to give the coaching edge to McVay. But again, from the physicality perspective, they're going to look to shut down Kyron Williams. Detroit only giving up 88 rushing yards heading into this ball game. So that's going to be the matchup. We'll see how it plays out a little bit later, Donnie.
And by the way, the tendencies that you try to line up, I'm not so much a side better anymore, but if you took a look yesterday, the simple cause is you fight for home field advantage, and for good reason. Both of the home teams really took care of business. The road teams looked out of sorts in both environments. Now, am I saying the Green Bay Packers and the Rams won't show up today? No. But also that key ingredient of we know how good the Detroit Lions are at home. The Rams took that bye week last week. Is that going to hold up in this football game today? But I think we can both agree. We're not going to have any problems going, I wonder how these quarterbacks are going to play today. I think you get full gas from all four of them.
Yes, here's going to be the difference, and I know it's going to feel a bit obvious when I say it, but it's going to be the interceptions. Stafford, during that whole Super Bowl run, look, I'm going to give you one. Am I going to give you two, and are you going to return it to the house? Goff, down the stretch, started to throw a couple of interceptions. Dak, last year, the story of his season was the interception bug. Cleaned it up against Tampa Bay. Then he went and played the Niners in the divisional round, and it was a mess. Dak actually threw 2 picks to close out the regular season in consecutive games there. And then Jordan Love, the young gun of this group, a postseason debut on the road. C.J. Stroud played a clean football game.
Real clean.
Jordan Love is, I mean, my goodness. I mean, that kid should have won it. I'm not going to get into it. Should have won MVP over Lamar. That's fine. Jordan Love has to play clean football today.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's been playing clean football
Yes,
since November 12th, guys. 20 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. Can that continue in a playoff environment? We'll see.
We absolutely will. We are coming up against the break, though. What we're going to do is dive into Texans-Browns. The outlook for Houston moving forward, they're changing odds. The expectation is they will play Baltimore, though no guarantee. And what's next for the Cleveland Browns right here on Pro Football Today.
You have sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine.
Big 12, who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those 2 plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars had, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. Not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Big ball game yesterday in Houston. The Texans and the Browns, a 45-14 result in favor of Houston as a 2.5 point home underdog. This game clearly going through its listed total of 44.5, 45. And I don't need to waste I don't think it's a waste of time to get into the fact that I think C.J. Stroud is a more deserving MVP candidate than Lamar Jackson. But it's certainly relevant moving forward for the Houston Texans. And by the way, I am not an anti-Lamar guy. I had to spend a lot of this offseason defending Lamar Jackson's decisions and the fact that nobody in the NFL wanted to bring in Lamar Jackson. It's that C.J. Stroud has been out of this world this season. They showed it last night on the broadcast we were just talking about during the break. 3 quarterbacks in the history of this league have led the NFL in the same season, touchdown-interception ratio, and passing yards per game. Joe Montana, Tom Brady, C.J. Stroud. Like, it's not one of those things where it's like, look, it was Tom Brady, Nick Foles.
Yeah, exactly,
like,
yes.
No. It's, for a lot of people, the 2 greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game. 2 of the 5 best probably on anybody's list at the quarterback position. And by the way, that's not rookie seasons. That's NFL history. That's what you got from C.J. Stroud in his rookie year. And it's what you got yesterday, 16 for 21, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I lost the completions prop because he was too damn good. That and Flacco pick sixes. But when we line up so often, there's a lot of stuff, right? I know, Joe, you always offensive, defensive line. Donnie, always about the coaches, right? But all of us, anybody that watches or bets on football, what's my quarterback advantage like? And at minimum, at no point do the Texans walk into a game at a disadvantage at that quarterback position.
Not anymore. I'll say this, and that was the question mark, or maybe the love for Cleveland entering this ballgame, is that Joe Flacco was the more experienced quarterback, had won a Super Bowl, so the playoff environment would not be a lot for him in terms of this type of situation. But C.J. Stroud erased that yesterday, and I think he erased it last year in regards to the semifinal playoff loss against Georgia. He was questioned up until that point of potentially not being able to win the big game. He took that team on his shoulders and potentially, struck almost the miracle upset on New Year's Eve last year. That was it for me. Once I saw that ball game play out, you knew that he had what it took to perform at an elite level. He stood in the pocket. He made adjustments. He didn't fear the pass rush. He delivered the football. And once he hit that big play, I believe it was to Nico Collins in regards to the first half where they get inside the 10, that was it. You knew that he was there to play. And Cleveland did not make second-half adjustments. He outplayed them and deserved. Let me say this. The rest of the way, they are a dark horse because he plays like that. they're going to be a very difficult out the way that defense is playing.
Game ended in a boat race, 45-14, but most people won't remember that it was 14-10 Cleveland this game. Hey, we got a shootout on our hands, and Kevin brings up a good point. You look at 16 for 21 for 274. Let's just say there weren't 2 pick six the other way. That's 36 for 51 for 521. I truly believe that. And we're talking about one of the better defenses in the National Football League that was healthy coming off of a bye that couldn't do anything. One of my handicaps on the show yesterday, why I actually liked the Cleveland Browns, was I thought that front seven would do damage, because the one thing we do know, which is great sometimes for a quarterback, I'm going to hold the ball for an extra 2 seconds to make that big play, but also that means taking sacks. You see yesterday, 3 touchdown passes, no interceptions, no sacks yesterday. They were tremendous on the front line. That was a thorough beating all the way through that, quite frankly, could have been much worse. You were even talking about the end of the game, the Cleveland Browns with 14 points, final 4 drives. The defense here for Houston was like, hey, we're going to prevent the rest of the way, do whatever you want. They still couldn't. Why? The front seven for Houston dominated that football game.
And one of the things, too, and I'm just using this to make the point. I'm not, hung up on it. I know Stroud can't win MVP, and I didn't bet him to win MVP. But in the NFL, that award is decided by the quarterback on the team with the best record, basically, right? But the NBA style, usually the MVP award is, well, who can do the most with the least? And Nico Collins has obviously turned into an incredible football player. But that's what we're talking about here. Nico Collins, Devin Singletary, right, pushed out of Buffalo there. I mean, Brevin Jordan on the 76-yard touchdown. Dalton Schultz pushed out of Dallas happily. A lot of people think Jake Ferguson is the better player. When you look at Houston and what is going on, and that is why Stroud gets a ton of credit. DeMeco Ryans, we'll see where the dust settles on Coach of the Year. And also a lot of people are seeing what happens with Bobby Slowick this offseason, their offensive coordinator. And here, I mean, look, it's kind of funny. For a while, everyone then was just trying to pick guys off the Shanahan and McVay tree. And then there was this kind of pushback of, I can't believe we're doing this. This is such a mistake. Yeah. Well, the worst guy off that tree is Zach Taylor, and he went to a Super Bowl and then won 3 games with Jake Browning this year. I keep picking off the damn tree, and that's obviously where Bobby Slowick is from. So for the Texans, the future remains bright. Though, again, if Slowick is hired this offseason, just those type of changes, right? The Bills went through a bump when Dable left, and obviously they've now found something there, but we'll just see how that all plays out. On the other side of it, and this is, look, 45-14 is extreme, but if I told you, Donnie, before this game, hey, Flacco's going to throw 2 pick sixes, at no point do you go, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. You go, I mean, I thought he'd throw 2. I just didn't know they'd both be returned to the house.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you would have told me that he would throw for 307 and drop back 46 times, I'd say in this football game, he'd easily throw for 2 touchdown passes, which was my favorite play yesterday, which somehow didn't cross over. But this was a great performance. And I think, Joe, you brought up earlier, we're not looking at the Houston Texans now as, let's just play with house money and move forward. They're getting elite offensive play. And if that defense, which is now healthy at a lot of positions on the front line and also in the secondary, that was a beating yesterday. They're not going into the next football game where the other team's going, oh, man, love it, man. The Texans won, and we don't have to play the Cleveland Browns. That's not happening.
No, absolutely not. And I'll say this about DeMeco Ryans. I believe he is Coach of the Year in regards to that, because you look, now they're doing it without Tank Dell. That was a performer in terms of, and think about, we talked about it in the pregame yesterday in terms of making the adjustments after you lose a ball game. They got absolutely abused by Cleveland 3 weeks prior, 36-22, Amari Cooper, right, 264. He was a non-factor yesterday. They took him completely out of the ballgame. The rushing attack, which I thought needed to be existent in terms of in the road environment to at least take the pressure off of Joe Flacco. They run for 2.8 yards per rush. This was a defense heading into the Indy game that was only giving up 3.3 yards per carry. Jonathan Taylor exposed them as an outlier, but then they regroup again, and that's what DeMeco Ryans did. But Stefanski did not break tendency in terms of this ballgame. He relied on Joe Flacco. That's as far as Joe Flacco could take them. That's, he capped out. He's a 38-year-old quarterback. If Deshaun Watson was there, maybe a little bit different. But the bigger question is, why were they able to get that type of productivity out of Joe Flacco at the end of the year when for 3/4 of the season you couldn't get it with Deshaun Watson that hasn't thrown a 300-yard game yet?
Yeah, the thing for me still on the Watson side of it, because that became a conversation. Excuse me. I have to go grab water. I think Watson, though, his final performance was a win against Baltimore. There's going to still be a lot of optimism around him next season.
No, there will be, and I understand that. Now, did Stefanski, in terms of the play calling, once Deshaun Watson was out, all of a sudden open up the offense and challenge defenses over the top because he had no other alternative I think that needs to remain to be seen. But again, moving forward for next year, when you have a healthy Nick Chubb and you have a healthy offensive line, you have to be able to light defenses up in terms of the passing attack, Donnie. That is why Houston and C.J. Stroud are so explosive and, more importantly, successful.
You know what's interesting, too, about Cleveland, Joe, as we take a look is, like, next year Deshaun Watson is coming back. But also, you saw a team that said, you know what, if we just get competent quarterback play, we can move the football, we can be aggressive. And maybe if you do get Nick Chubb back next year and you handle that backfield, it's a little bit more formidable. The passing rights are there. Njoku is now a beast, and rightfully so. He was drafted out of the University of Miami as a very athletic tight end that now you're seeing it pushing down the field. I don't even want to say, like, the biggest winner, obviously, was the Houston Texans and C.J. Stroud. But for me, a little bit there, Watson was like, man, imagine if Flacco just went on this playoff run. Like, where do I find myself in this city at this point? But I agree with next year's going to be a big year for Stefanski, but he understands that if I can even go to a four-string quarterback and we can win, why can't we do it with a dominated quarterback if he returns back to what we thought he was in Houston?
I think if you're also the Browns, did our defense just get banged up? Or did we get exposed? Did we get figured out?
I think it got exposed.
Look at that D coordinator.
That secondary has
Jim.
been lit up towards the second half of the season.
And again, but they did pick up a lot of injuries. And it's kind of, look, the answer at the end of the day for this season is it doesn't matter. They got abused. When we're trying to evaluate the Browns going into the next season, they're going to be a fascinating
division.
handicap. We go to Chiefs, Dolphins, my oh my, next right here on Sports.
You have sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live on SportsGrid, it is Pro Football Today. We've finished up Houston-Cleveland. The Texans are now 11-1 to win the conference, a tempting number, around 33-1 to win the Super Bowl. Browns enter now looking for some offseason plans. The Chiefs are moving forward. Same price as the Bills to win this conference now, and their Super Bowl number is dropping. We'll start on the winning side. Joe, how impressed were you with the Chiefs' win yesterday?
Oh, impressive because they bounced back, right? A little bit inconsistent. We talked about it on the pregame, 5-4 at home. They had lost 4 home games by a total average margin of defeat of 3.5 points per game, but they completely dominated in a playoff environment. Both sides of the offense and defensive lines never challenged in this ballgame. 16-7 first half lead, never turned back, and that was an impressive win because it was the Miami Dolphins and an offense that potentially has the capability of challenging that secondary over the top, but they completely took them out of the game plan. And from an offensive perspective, we talk about playoff environments. If they're going to have to go on the road, can you run the football? Buck 47 on the ground, average 4.3 yards per carry. As long as that defense can force the turnover battle and win, they're going to be in each and every ball game because of Patrick Mahomes. So very impressed yesterday.
Look, and when I was looking at this game overall, because we knew the really bad weather was coming in here, I wasn't surprised that it stayed under the total. But you know what I was surprised about? Kansas City did look comfortable in this environment. And I said, well, Donnie, that's what they're supposed to do. They're not from Miami. At least they practice in somewhat colder temperatures. I hear you on that. But when you're looking at the game flow, after 2 drives, what did you say in your head? Kansas City looks like they're eventually going to break through here. Ooh, Miami. I don't know what they're doing on offense, but it looks like they're just trying to hang on throughout this game. I never felt at any moment like Miami was inserting their will into this football game outside of that one deep play to Tyreek Hill. I said that could be the way to do it. That could break through, and now you can stay aggressive. Didn't stay aggressive here. Kansas City ran their offense regardless of weather and said, I have an all-pro quarterback. I have a running back that's going to be running hard in this game, and I'm going to make some plays here with Rashee Rice and also Travis Kelce. And it worked. But, again, looking at the game, I wish I would have known it coming in more. Like, hey, Kansas City's not going to care about the weather, but Miami's really going to tuck tail. And you might tell me, like, Donnie, that's what was supposed to happen in this game. Nobody is used to playing in minus 27-degree temperatures, but you could have fooled me yesterday with Kansas City.
Yeah, and that's why when I look at the wagers I lost yesterday, I tell you, I didn't lose it because of the weather. I lost because Miami has problems right now with their football team, but the main one is their quarterback. There has been a lot of debate around Tua Tagovailoa as the guy for the Miami Dolphins for a while. I know a lot of people left yesterday's game frustrated with Mike McDaniel. I'll tell you this right now, as someone who's an Eagles fan and knows their head coach could be fired, you want to trade and send us Mike McDaniel? Deal, no problem. You take Sirianni, and I like Sirianni a lot. You can take Belichick, you can take Vrabel. I'll take Mike McDaniel because play callers like that are a rare breed. McDaniel fits into the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay ilk. And you know what Kyle Shanahan did with Jimmy Garoppolo? He moved on from him. And he moved on from him for Trey Lance, who he also moved on from, and now has Brock Purdy, and a lot of people think will win a Super Bowl this season because of it, not because of Brock Purdy, but it's obviously a lot more confidence than what people had around Jimmy Garoppolo. Sean McVay had Jared Goff, a first-round draft pick that they traded up to get. Moved on from him. Got Stafford, won a Super Bowl. The Miami Dolphins have smartly not rammed to the window to pay Tua Tagovailoa. Herbert's got his money. Burrow's got his money. Tua does not. The Dolphins, incredibly, have shown more restraint than the New York Giants did with their decision to pay Daniel Jones. It is not an overreaction. Just because they drafted this kid 5th does not mean they need to go down with the ship again, because they already did this year, last year, and they don't need to do it next year. The Dolphins call the Bears on Fields, the Cardinals on Kyler, figure out the draft that's what it's going to come down to, and see if Bo Nix has real NFL promise. I don't care. There is no reason for Tua to be the Miami Dolphins starting quarterback beyond this season unless Mike McDaniel wants to lose his job next year.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I'll just say this. You talk about his progression in college. He had playmakers around them at every level. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, John Mechie, all NFL caliber talent around him, and he put up numbers. In this offense, he put up numbers when those playmakers made plays. It's been 8 games since he had a 300-yard performance. He had 4 300-yard performances at the start of the year until they went to Germany to face off against Kansas City. So you tell me, is he a product of the system? He's not a quarterback that you say can take the game over like Patrick Mahomes, like even Josh Allen that outdueled him last week, 350 yards to basically a $193 in terms of that matchup with the AFC title on the line. I mean, come on. There's no doubting that he's a good quarterback, but he's not elite. He's not like any of these other quarterbacks in the playoffs. He's not even like Stroud, because Stroud could take the team on his shoulders with or without elite wide receivers and make those guys better. Tua hasn't done that.
I think he's a really good quarterback. I do. And I'm actually surprised. One of the more surprising things of the season that he played every single game and wasn't injured. So I was like, hey, that's a start here, because that's basically why they weren't giving him the big money to start. But trust me, it's what you see down the stretch. This isn't a Miami Dolphins team that when what Tyreek Hill said, we overachieved and we'll be back next year. I mean, ridiculous talk at that point. But actually, you saw a football team that maybe should have been the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. Go in and beat Baltimore. Tua, be a big reason for that. Or how about this? Lose that game. You know what? We're going to rebound at home. I'm going to take this football game over against the Buffalo Bills. Lost that game too. I'm going to go on the road in an environment where most people think we can't be competitive. You know what? I wasn't competitive and I lost. Those are major questions that you come in. And also, it's not as if Mike McDaniel could say, man, I don't know what I would be without Tua Tagovailoa. Insert another very good quarterback with a live arm. That offense will move just as well as what Tua Tagovailoa does. And also to the point of, can you keep him around? This isn't matter. It's like, hey, how about a 1-year, $4 million deal, too? Approve it again. That's not what quarterbacks go for. So you're going to have to invest $100+ million in Tua Tagovailoa if that's your guy. And also, from a free agent perspective and from a quarterbacks that are looking to get out, you know who would die to get into Miami? Those guys. Anybody would love to slide right into that system, Kevin.
But Tyreek Hill, he underthrew. I mean, that's the joke. He underthrew him. It was going to end up being a big play because they were going to get the pass interference call, but he underthrew Tyreek. If he hit him in stride, it would have been a walk, and instead Tyreek had to come back to it, shake 3 tackles. He's not the guy. And I just think that's evident here with the Miami Dolphins. And again, a lot of Mike McDaniel has so much that. Look, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle is an outrageous 1-2 punch. Raheem Mostert is a 31-year-old running back, and Devon Achane was a 3rd-round pick, okay? They don't have a tight end that anybody knows outside of DRS lining up some Durham props.
Durham.
And he had,
shouldn't have known that guy's
the
name.
3rd-string wide receiver is River Craycraft. Like, let's not act like this team is rolling out what Kyle Shanahan rolls out with on a nightly basis in San Francisco, right? I mean, it's just not the scenario there, right? So this is a spot for me where Miami is either going to sink themselves by locking into Tua, or they're going to be able to reroute. They finished the season 0-7 against the spread against playoff teams.
Yeah.
1-6 straight up. I mean, it's absolutely indefensible.
Who did they beat? Tell me who
Dallas by 2.
Right, but Dallas has major problems on the road, right? They're exactly carbon copies of each other, NFC and AFC teams, right? They can't step up in competition. They beat up on mediocre sub-500 ball clubs like Washington, like the LA Chargers that are absolutely gutless, and they put up 30 and 40 points. But in games where their offense really needs to step up, like in 2 meetings against Kansas City, what do they put up? They put up 21 points in 2 meetings against Kansas City. That is absolutely atrocious. And I understand everybody wants to talk about the defense, but it's not the defense. It's the offense as well against better defenses like the Philadelphia Eagles at the start of the year as well. When Philadelphia was humming, would they put up 17 points in that first ball game? I don't like Mike McDaniel as coach. I know he's a great offensive mind. He has elevated both Waddle and Tyreek Hill. But I don't like them as a big game coach. They're not prepared. They don't come out with any intensity. And honestly, I would move on from them.
Like, there were some injuries down the stretch, but take the defense out of the way. Like, you should be able to lean on your offense. After that Jets game, which the Jets were terrible, 30-0, they put up 22 against the Cowboys, 19 against the Ravens, 14 against the Bills, 7 in the playoffs. Like, it just ran out of gas. I'm not saying like the offense or the other defenses caught up to them, but you sort of ran out of gas here at the end of it. It would have been a completely different story if you went down and said, hey, you know what? We beat the Cowboys 41-40. We lost to the Ravens 56-55. Or even yesterday's game saying, hey, they had a pulse. They came down to the last possession. We didn't win it here. They couldn't do anything yesterday, and that's an indictment there.
I mean, also, he can move about as well as Joe Flacco, too. I'm sorry. I can't. Like, it's, you know what? Go get Trey Lance out of Dallas, quite frankly, and let's see what Mike McDaniel can do with him. To re-rack this on Kansas City, here's the thing. We talked about this yesterday on the show. The Chiefs this season have not beaten a single playoff team other than Miami. And we just did 10 minutes on all of the Miami issues. The Chiefs' offense looked the same it has all year long, and you did a great job of explaining it. That is about as injured of a defense as any team has put out onto the field, it feels like, all season long as well with the Miami Dolphins. The Kansas City Chiefs got a touchdown, moved it, stall out, drop, penalty, stall out, kick the field goal, right? They weren't great in this game, Kansas City's offense. And next week, they're either going to play C.J. Stroud or Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. They just didn't answer a lot of questions for me in this game.
No, I understand that, but they still have number 15 under center, and as long as he's there and a two-time Super Bowl champ, I would like to bet on him in a certain type of situation, right? And the games they lost, even at home, were very close ball games. Philly by 4, Buffalo by 3. The only game that they potentially got, I want to say, boat raced a little bit was the Las Vegas game on Christmas Day where he throws the pick six and they were trailing by double digits. Other than that, they've been in each and every ball game, just haven't been as consistent as we've seen in regards to that Kansas City offense. But as long as Pat Mahomes is healthy, he's legit, especially if he's catching points.
I don't want to give up on Kansas City, but still I'm not looking to buy back in on them in the playoffs here. I've seen enough of them in the regular season where when they go up against an opponent that I feel is better than them in a different environment where they might be on the road, I'm going to take them to lose the football game. I just am. I bought in twice during the season late, and they let me down. I'm not buying it again.
It is time we turn our attention to today's games. We begin in Dallas. Cowboys-Packers next.
You have sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
get into today's slate. We unfortunately, are you upset that we're not doing Bill Steelers?
I am.
Or you like that we have the doubleheader tomorrow?
You know, it's funny because, again, if I lived in a different area, it would be much better. But I sort of feel like tomorrow I can probably watch more of the game. But just the overall breakdown, I was really excited for us to. It might have taken over the whole show, 2 to 3 hours. Yeah. Because you would have told me you loved the over in the snow.
Right.
You would have said you loved the Buffalo Bills. I would have sat here. We had an outright winner in the Steelers, and it would have been great theater.
I love the Bills. He liked the
To some degree. We agreed. Donnie thought that Buffalo would win the game by about 10, give them Steelers plus the points on the money line and in the under.
Yes,
So
parlay it.
You know, somehow that was the breakdown. But instead, we get into Dallas, Green Bay, a total of 50.5, and a side sitting at 7 right now. There were 7.5s as the main number for the beginning of the week, and those were all taken away. At no point, though, has 6.5 appeared. That 50.5 at some spots is 51, so you see there are some folks keying in on this total. I started out the week being very interested in Green Bay. I think Jordan Love is playing great football right now, and Dallas, to me, I still think if you put a playoff team in front of them, it could be a difficult task. You all know I do not believe in their defense. I would take the points with Green Bay. If they score first, they should be there all game. The back door is open. But as we've gotten closer to kick, there is no reason that this Dallas offense, who has been basically untouchable all season long at home, does not have their way with this Packers defense that has really slipped up as the season has progressed.
Well, that's why I like the over in this ballgame. 50.5 is the total heading into this matchup. You mentioned the defense for Green Bay, giving up 128 rushing yards per game, well over 200 yards in terms of the back end. And we know Dak Prescott, right? Very efficient, 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But more importantly, a dominant home team in Arlington. What have they won? 16 straight. The only game they basically didn't score over 30 was the 1-point win on a Monday night against Detroit. So, again, can Tony Pollard be effective? If so, they're going to have offensive balance. However, I think this game does head into the fourth quarter. It might favor Dallas, but I still think Jordan Love and Green Bay will be in this ballgame. You saw the emergence of Aaron Jones over the past 3 weeks. He's averaging 119 rushing yards per game. You could utilize him in terms of the short to intermediate passing game. And we talk about Jordan Love's progression. We could talk about C.J. Stroud, right? Rightfully so. Jordan Love, one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFC. I talked about it. 64% completion percentage, 32 touchdowns. He's thrown 20 touchdowns over the past 8 games. That travels well, and they're sort of playing with house money. We saw it with Houston yesterday in terms of not a lot of people expecting them to win that ball game, even though they were home. Yeah. On the road, everybody in the Dallas Love is just thinking, you know what, Dak's going to step up. They haven't done it in this situation. I'm going to take the points in the over today.
Yeah, I really like what Green Bay has done throughout the season, Joe. And quite frankly, if you're taking a look at Jordan Love as your starting quarterback, it's been interesting because he hasn't had his full complement of wide receivers for most of the year. Each and every week it felt like running backs were in and out. You get Aaron Jones, who's a very good running back that looks like he's back to his capabilities that we've seen for the past couple of years, why he got a big contract there for Green Bay. 3 straight games over 100 yards. That's going to be key on the road to sort of hold that line of scrimmage where the play action will work. And also, it's been a month since Christian Watson has lined up for the Green Bay Packers. The reports are coming out today that he's pushing to play along with Jair Alexander. If he does play, even if he's a decoy, that helps that entire offense out. Jaden Reed, I think, has a very quality day today also. But if we are being honest, outside of the Buffalo Bills game that the Dallas Cowboys played, they've been an offensive machine, even if it meant being on the road. But if I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers, take a look at the last 2 games, and sometimes it's just about coming into the playoffs hot. On offense, fantastic against Minnesota. Buck 77 on the ground, 293 in the air. Chicago, 124 on the ground, 308 in the air. But look at the defense. 75 yards on the ground, 67 on the ground, 117 in the air, 144 in the air. It's probably as good as Green Bay has played heading down the stretch all season long. I like the momentum here, but also, guys, we have to talk about 7.5s all week long, down to 7. That's a big move.
It is. I mean, 6.5, right, would be stunning. But now I think there's a lot of people out there wondered, all right, does everyone just get their money back? Dallas by 7, right? Could that game play out this way? Here's where I would disagree a little bit, and now here I am defending Dallas. They go to San Fran, it's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Buffalo, it's a disaster. Miami, they had some turnover issues. They brought Philly in, they smashed them. Now Philly had turnover issues, but they smashed them. Detroit, they beat. The game was nuts, but also Dallas did throw a pick inside Detroit territory and fumbled at the 1-yard line. The game probably shouldn't have been as close as it was. And again, if Dan Campbell wasn't out of his mind, that game would have been 20-20, and Dallas would have had an opportunity to potentially win it in regulation with however that would have played out. But again, they still handled their business. When we line up the Packers this season, they haven't even really played a lot of road playoff games, right? They went to Pittsburgh and lost. The Chiefs came in. They did beat them. Tampa came in. They obviously were incredibly smashed in that game. They're also smashed by the Lions at home. What they do have is that win on the road against Detroit, and that's a playoff road win that they have. It is division, and I think we all know division can be different. But what was key for that game against Detroit was the early lead. And that's why I just said I would probably grab the points, because the pathway for Green Bay is, and I know we joke, get the football first, tempo, 7-0. We're in this game the whole way. But if Dallas goes out there 7-0, 3-and-out Packers, again, when I say good night, a 7 number can be in range. But we're talking about, the number 2 seed Dallas Cowboys not messing this game up. That score first, and I know it's cliche, but it is so imperative for, I think, Green Bay to get out to a lead to make sure that they don't feel like they are chasing this high-powered Cowboys offense all game.
No, you're right. And 2 games in particular that Green Bay did do that. You mentioned the Detroit game on Thanksgiving. He jumped up early, right? That has been the MO when they're on the road. So that is a good matchup, I think, for Green Bay. Not only that, with Jordan Love making his first playoff start, you want to get rid of the butterflies in terms of that type of situation, get the crowd out of it in regards to Arlington. I think when you look at Dallas and you look at this game, what's it going to resemble? Is it going to resemble Dallas when they played the L.A. Rams earlier in the year in Stafford? They absolutely smacked them around. I think it was 45-20, jumped out like 27-0. Or is it going to resemble the game on the Thursday night where we watched it play out against a mediocre defense in terms of Seattle? Geno Smith, DK Metcalf had a field day, and it was a back-and-forth type of affair, and whichever team had the football last won that ball game. The fact that Christian Watson potentially is back in this matchup is a factor for me, but it is the confidence of Jordan Love. Put anybody around him, he's distributing the football, finding the open playmakers, and Aaron Jones is a key to this offense. Again, not just on the ground, but to get him out in space in terms of the short to intermediate passing game. Hasn't scored a touchdown, guys, and I believe 4 or 5 games. I think he hits paid there today. I'm expecting maybe 2 in this matchup. I like Green Bay a lot, and I do like the over.
You know what? It is a good point for Aaron Jones, because if you're asking, they say, Donnie, give me one key to the game here. Of course, Dak Prescott plays well or CeeDee Lamb goes off. It's actually Aaron Jones for me. We see 3 straight performances, 20-plus carries over 100 yards. You control the game flow by that, which means the defense in that front 7 can't just tee off on your quarterback, can't just go nuts in that spot, and you're going to have to honestly play it straight up. So I agree with you on that fold of it, but if I'm going from the opposite side for the Dallas Cowboys today, I do think Dak Prescott has a very good game. I really do. But also, CeeDee Lamb catching a touchdown pass, I'm in on that. Tony Pollard scoring a touchdown, I'm in on that as well. I think we do get points today, and to Joe's point that he brought up, honestly, if we get good reports from Christian Watson before the game, that means both of these offenses are full gas. Look, I know A.J. Dillon is down. Usually that's a bad thing to say, that's your 1-2 punch. I don't think so. Like, you're rested and ready with Aaron Jones. He's finally healthy. Use him in this game. It's on turf. He should be electric today.
The problem for me, though, the Aaron Jones numbers are...
There's no discounts.
I mean,
that's why they're receiving 19.5. I think it's
sure. Again, that makes sense. But you're paying a number of nearly in the 80s for a team that's a 7-point dog.
Exactly. It's tough.
I mean,
you're
that
right.
is stunning. And again, LaFleur, and he's been right. Got to attack through the air. We have to attack through the air. You know the difference. And I know, look, he's hit some runs early, right? But they're icing ball games occasionally, right? There's more carries down the back end for Aaron Jones, and those aren't necessarily anticipated being there. I'll get into this more with the Sunday Morning Crunch. Again, we can kind of do it now. You know, people come in and out, whatever it might be. The Green Bay pass-catching core not only expected Christian Watson back, but they also last week brought back Luke Musgrave. And he was supposed to be the tight end for this team, but we've also seen Tucker Kraft be great for this team. I'm betting both of them. Kraft at 26.5, Musgrave at 15.5. And as tempting as it is to say the good old, well, I can't lose both. I'd be losing juice then. I think I can hit both of these numbers here because and this is a rarity, but what the books have basically done is take what they would expect the full Green Bay number to be and then just kind of parse it out, you're getting very low numbers on both of these guys. Again, Tucker Kraft has gone over that prop in 6 consecutive games at 26.5. Luke Musgrave, in 8 of the 9 games he finished, because he did get injured in a game against the Lions, in 8 of the 9 went through that prop of 16.5. And I don't know if Watson's going to get this major workload. And if they're trailing, today, there could be more attempts. I think both of these tight ends today can get through wildly low props.
It's a good look because the tight end is always a check down, right? So if Dallas takes away the deep ball or the 15-yard dig route, you go underneath in terms of the flat to the tight ends. That's the security blanket, especially in critical third down situations, right? So that's a matchup to keep an eye out. I am not concerned, but I am curious to see who's the tighter team. Is it McCarthy that's playing, maybe for his job if he loses this game? LaFleur's playing with house money. And the one thing that LaFleur has done in terms of the playmakers like Jaden Reed, he's got these defenses running sideline to sideline. They utilize Jaden Reed in terms of fly sweeps. I don't know if they're just going to line up and try to run Aaron Jones, which goes right into Micah Parsons and that front seven. They might get them running sideline to sideline, short to intermediate throws, and then hit them later in the ballgame with Aaron Jones if they establish a lead. That's something to keep an eye out on. But I do like LaFleur in this spot because I think he's playing a little bit with house money, guys.
I think Jordan Love plays well. I think Dak Prescott plays well. Even though this line is only 7, we're not talking about like 17.5. Like, I hope they can stay inside that number. I would be amazed, though, to be honest, if Green Bay won this game. Like, that's the way I'm feeling here. I would be shocked. Like, yesterday, you see Houston won. Like, it was like, oh, that's a big win. It wouldn't shock me Houston won. If Green Bay goes into Dallas and beats them, number one, it's going to be interesting to see what Green Bay has left in the tank moving forward because it means they're officially a hot football team. But where do the Dallas Cowboys go from here if they lose this home game with the number 2 seed here?
Well, I actually, Dan Quinn is where they go. I think McCarthy will be fired if they lost this game and Quinn will take over because
No,
I
don't think so.
No,
I think you got to clean. I think you got to clean it out.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no, Jerry loves Dan Quinn.
I don't know.
I think Jerry, to some degree, is a little disappointed that he knows that he's going to be losing. Listen, I don't know how they have avoided losing Dan Quinn for like 3 consecutive years now, but everybody knows he's taking the Seattle job. Basically, if Dallas doesn't give him this job, just quickly with the LaFleur playing with house money. So Jordan Love, 32 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards, has answered the bell. There's this thing with quarterbacks where we ask, hey, does sitting help? I now definitively believe that the answer to that is 100% yes. If I drafted a quarterback, you will sit for a year. But you're not sitting for 4 because the Packers blew the whole rookie contract window. Jordan Love gave them 1 good season, and now they have to pay him like a rock star quarterback. And he might be a rock star quarterback. I mean, look, he obviously did a lot more this season than whatever the hell Daniel Jones did, and that joke of a contract by the Giants. I will continue to run the score up there. How wrong were those fans? But they don't have any more breathing room. So I get what you're like. LaFleur is playing free and easy, but they don't walk into next year. Oh, now's the year you prove it. No, now you're paid Jordan Love.
Right. No, well, yeah, absolutely. It is a bad decision to allow him to sit. But.
Yeah. We'll continue to break it down. We're live with you on a Sunday morning. Pro Football Today.
Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The Weiss said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing 300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take a little
it.
piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars had, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. Not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back right here on Pro Football Today. Our breakdown for Sunday Night Football Rams-Lions begins with a Sharp report.
When Jared Goff goes up against his old coach, Sean McVay, we might expect fireworks. It'll be interesting to see, though, how Sean McVay instructs his defensive coordinator of how to attack Jared Goff and the things that Goff doesn't like. But one thing I'm going to be paying attention to is how frequently this Lions offense choose to utilize play action. Play action has really caused problems for the LA Rams. Over the course of the entire season, they're the most sensitive defense to play action. But look at the numbers as they've played against play action in the splits since week 10. They rank versus play action dead last in EPA per attempt allowed, dead last in success rate, and dead last in yards per attempt, allowing 11.9 yards per attempt. But when teams pass the ball without play action on early downs, they rank 9th in EPA per attempt, 2nd in success rate, and number 1 in yards per attempt, allowing just 4.4 yards per attempt. One of the other things that's important here is that the Rams play tons of cover 3 defense, among the top 5 ranked of zone defense in the NFL, and they utilize a lot of cover 3 in doing so. And Jared Goff has ranked top 5 in both EPA and success rate against cover 3 this year. He's top 10 in yards per attempt against cover 3. The Lions passing attack, though it is down Laporta, has some advantages over this Rams pass defense. The key, though, is going to be how do the Rams adjust, being that they know Jared Goff as well as they do. It's going to be a fun game to watch.
Great breakdown there from Warren. Myself, Donnie, and Joe will be previewing Lions-Rams in full, a field goal line in favor of the 3-seed Detroit Lions against their former franchise quarterback, Matthew Stafford. And there has been so much talk about it. The Stafford revenge. No Goff revenge? Goff, spoiler, 2 passing touchdowns? Can we get this? I think we can. But next, it's Sell Me Something, back in less than a minute on Pro Football Today.
Bam.